back, everybody. This is Allan Spencer, and I'm glad you're joining us on the Masterpiece Symposium. This is a video that's going to be dedicated to the update for all of this mess that you just saw. I've been receiving a lot of messages for the last year and a half of people who want to see update and asking questions on what I've done. It's been a pretty wild ride, and so I wanted to wait for a pretty good time to kind of let everyone know what happened and what I was able to do after that in court and all that. So here's what I'm going to do. I have recordings of most of the interactions that I had to deal with since that day, and all the cop conversations or going toe-to-toe with judges and getting them to retrieve from the courtroom and all that stuff, and disqualifying judges and all this. I mean, you saw what I do, right? So I did a lot of that similar kind of stuff, but the problem is I've literally been told by the district attorney of Fresno County, if you put those recordings on YouTube, I'll arrest you again. And that's, of course, obnoxious. I mean, it's so ridiculous to say that you can't, make 100% public material available to the public. I mean, what is more public than a courtroom? So I know it's all nonsense, and if I really wanted to put myself through hell fighting it, I could probably do it, but it just wouldn't be a hell of a lot of fun. So instead of dropping those recordings right now on this video, I'm going to narrate and give you the synopsis of all the communication that happened either between me and the judge, or so and me, and all these other things that I had to deal with. But with the full intention of actually dropping the live and in living color conversations. But I know right now you guys just want an update, and if I'm going to do the live and living color stuff, this is going to take a lot longer, so I just wanted to get you guys familiar with everything that's been going on so far. So I'm going to narrate all this material for you and say, this is the stuff that I said, and I'm going to be able to prove it later when you hear it live in a living color that I indeed told my public defender that he was a prostitute and gave him a mountain of evidence to support my claim, and he had absolutely no evidence to prove me wrong. I mean, you're going to hear all this stuff. I just literally use these words with them, literally. And I just know that there's a lot of people out there who talk big when they say that they, when they truly feel this way about our government, and then you get them in front of the government and they crumble like just a house built on sand. You have to know inward. You have to know what freedom and truth and justice is. You have to know it inside. And so, and people like me walk in there and they find out right away. I'm just going to trip them all up entirely. I mean, I had the district attorney of Fresno County tell me in court, you make me feel like I'm back in law school again, and I'm just some regular dude. I don't have a law degree, I'm just a dude who knows how to research. I'm exposing the fundamental truth that if a guy who doesn't know anything about all of your guys' laws and legislation and bothers memorizing any of that nonsense, if I can walk into a courtroom and make the judge leave the stand and retreat me, I mean, like, if I'm just a dude, how much more proof do you need that we're not obeying laws right now? They're not laws. And I don't want to get off into another video about that subject, but it's not law if a regular dude can walk in there and break the system. That means the system isn't justice. Okay, so sorry, back on topic. So the reason why I'm going to narrate all of these conversations right now instead of dropping it down, even though I know with absolute certainty that there's nothing illegal about showing public material to the public. And well, I guess I should explain. So I was speaking to a cop one time, and this is probably another conversation that I have recorded that I'll drop down on YouTube one day, but I was saying to him, if I go into a courtroom and I have a phonographic memory, I can memorize everything that I hear. And there are plenty of people who can do that. If I have a phonographic memory, can I go and listen to a courtroom and then go home and write down every single word that was said? And he's like, well, yeah. And I said, well, can I take everything that I write down, can I nail it to my front door just for fun? Or just because I just thought people might want to see it? And he'd be like, yeah, sure. I said, yeah, it's called publishing. You can independently gather information in a public room, write down whatever you want, and publish. We just have a more sophisticated version of that today. That's called YouTube, or whatever. That's the independent publisher that just says, hey, this is a journal of my thoughts or a journal of my experiences, that's just First Amendment written all over it. So I said, well, what if I take the phone in there and I record with the phone, and then take just the phone home and write down everything that happened just for fun. I mean, why would it matter? I mean, this is just a phono record, right? This is a recorder that records the sound. I can go in there and record audio, right? If I had a phonographic memory, why would you care if I went home and wrote down everything word for word? Right? I'm getting the same result when it's done. So it's ridiculous to think that you can tell someone you can't record in court. It's absolutely ridiculous. And or of course you could buy recordings from the court, which will give you the exact same material. Exact same material. But anyway, another whole video that I don't want to bother you with. I'm going to drop all those videos eventually, the real live and living color ones, because everyone needs to hear that I'm not full of shit. I know that you need to hear that, and I'm perfectly willing to do it, but I won't do it without protection. And if I raise enough money from these videos to put a high power constitutional law, common law jurisdiction attorney there's a few of them on YouTube, that are getting pretty successful at going in there and breaking the courtroom. If I can get what I would imagine is probably $20,000 retainer for an attorney like that, then I will drop everything right there. You can listen to my whole life live in living color, because I'll just wait for someone to come and arrest me. If I have an attorney like that waiting for them, I mean, it's gonna be beautiful, and that's a whole other issue that I could talk about another time too. But to be quite frank, I am really truly feeling like I'm some kind of freedom warrior that's putting my ass on the line all the time, toe to toe with judges, toe to toe with politicians, toe to toe with cops all the time, because I demand freedom for everybody. I demand it, and it's very risky what I do, and I really need to be. I'm getting tired, is what I'm saying. I'm very much to the point where I want to give up on everybody. I want to stop trying to do this, to expose to the world the corrupt system and the unjust system and the profitable system that we are a part of. I want to make sure that everyone knows this stuff is going on, but I can't do it anymore as a hobby. I can't. I mean, I have a life. I do really important things in my life besides this sort of stuff. I mean, and you can probably by now, I guess, determine. Well, how would I say? You could probably determine on what you've seen so far the level of detail and the thorough nature of my passion. That exists in other facets of my life too that are also very cool. I'm a musician. I'm an archer. All these other really cool things that I want to dedicate my life to. I don't feel like doing all of this. I don't get off on going out and pissing people off. It's not some kind of thrill for me. I just have a burning desire for freedom. That's what it is. But I need to be shown that there's support. I need to be shown that there are people who do like to watch a dude go toe to toe with the sheriff and just drop him. I'm talking verbally with them, and I just say, and by the time we get done, at this point, my sheriff's department and the sheriff's departments in neighboring counties will have absolutely nothing to do with me. I call, bam, phone hangs up. I know they've got my number blocked, and it's never because I've ever done anything wrong to them. It's because I call them and I start asking them questions, and it's all I've ever done. So some of you guys want to see a dude like me take it, stick it to the man, and I'm telling you, I'm your warrior. You watch this video and a bunch of other videos on my website. You're gonna be like, that's the guy I want fighting for me. That's the guy who fights for freedom. That's the guy who fights for rights, let's say. Well, if you want that, I need you to show me that there's a reason for me to not quit, because I'm very close to quitting. I'm like one guy kind of trying to make sense around me. I don't really know anyone else around me who does this kind of stuff that I do. So I need to be shown that yes, there's support from other people. And quite frankly, if you are one of those, I take it by the fact you're watching this video as you're probably logically a free market economist or something that's, you need to pay. You need to pay to get more of these videos. And I'm not talking about luxury. I'm just talking about $1 a month, as a subscription, just $1 a month. As long as I can generate enough I mean, $1 a month to see some badass just, just take it. I mean, it's beautiful, the things that I've got recorded that I'm going to narrate you through right now. It's just elegance. It's freedom and liberty and perfect elegance is how I would say. I mean, maybe not perfect. I screwed up a few things where I probably should have done other things in certain order or whatnot. I'm new at this, all I ever learn is what I research. That's it. I mean, my entire bachelor's and master's education in college could have been summed up in 7 coked up nights behind a computer on Google. I don't do coke, but I'm just saying, you know what I'm talking about. Now, you sit on Google, you fill an entire college education, if you just know how to look. This video right now that you're watching is a vein in a new pathway you are creating in your mind and your brain. I'm going to teach you how to look. I'm going to teach you how to discern between truth and fiction. I'm going to teach you what true research is like. True research, like Einstein said, I don't need to know anything, I just need to know how to look it up. And people thought, well, okay, fine, he was talking about this academic kind of way. I was like, no, much deeper than that. Einstein said, when you know to even ask yourself, how do I look it up? And what the hell does that mean? Looking it up doesn't answer anything. How do I know that's true? And when you start asking the question, how do I know that's true? Then you start to truly understand mentally the framework of how wisdom is built. When you start saying, how does that become true? Because you start relying on stuff and then a year later you're like, oh shit, that didn't work, right? And so you're like, oh man, all this stuff that, like I'm thinking, with agriculture or whatnot, basically we were always just trying to work it out. And, oops, getting a phone call. So in essence, I'm just saying, I know how to think. I know how to truly find truth because you eventually figure out there are some things that you can rely on. What are they based on? Reputation, right? The credibility. It's talking about reputation, credibility. I mean, so I know what I'm doing. And I think if you want to see a guy who knows what he's doing get even better, then I need protection. And I need a powerhouse. I mean, I'm not going to take all the time to learn all the crazy ass laws, so I can work, figure out how to whip that between inside the system. I admire the people who do, and if you can do it, it's wonderful. But I'm not doing it, And if you want to see a guy keep delivering the fire he's delivering, then put in $1 a month or $5 a month. I mean, come on, man. $5 a month from several people would be so helpful. So helpful. I mean, $5 a month, I mean, that's like, what, 2 coffees or something? Would you pay 2 coffees a month to keep watching someone be tight? To watch someone just, I mean, when I tell you the history of this, you just, it's nice. I'm telling you, like, it's going to be a long ride. I'm going to warn you right now, it's a long ride. I'm going to shove 1.5 years worth of information in as little time as I possibly can, and I'm already on several tangents, so, and I know, I'm sorry, I'm sort of like that, but here we go. I think that's all I need. I just need to, it's not I don't want to sound like some douchey, public television kind of fundraiser, but I mean, you guys gotta show me that you want it. You have to. You have to show me that you want it, and nothing speaks louder than economics. When you show me that, yes, I want this so bad, I'm gonna give just $5 freaking a month, $5 a month to see something that's really awesome. If you check out all of my other videos on my website, I think you might get a taste for how I think and why I do this kind of crazy shit in a lot of people's eyes. So here we go. I have even my own notes at this point because there's been so much that's gone on. I can't keep it all in order, and I'll probably even go a little bit out of order. I'm sorry. I'm still trying to juggle it myself, but I will do the best I can. So. I just got done I just got done with this traffic stop, this speeding ticket, and the officer's name was Officer, actually I probably shouldn't say it, in fact shouldn't. You'll understand why in a moment. So, in all of my cop conversations and politician conversations and things like that, I always tell them, or they always say to me, if you have any more questions, give me a call or, meet up with me and I'll be happy to meet you, blah, 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 blah. And they're all, 99% of them are douchebag, full of shits. Right, I'm just, sorry, full of shit douchebags, that's probably what, and I just assumed this dude was the same, so, just for the sake of keeping it simple, I'm just going to call him Pat. So, I call him up and left a message on his work phone, and he actually calls me back and says, yeah, he's like, I'd like to meet with you. I said, ooh, okay. And I just thought this was like some cocky guy that I was going to show up to a meeting with, and have to just, whip him around a little bit, which don't get me wrong, I still do, but he says he's willing to meet with me at Starbucks. I say, okay, so I go to meet at Starbucks, and he tells me all these things about how, it was really fascinating. He was talking about how sort of he knew about all the, a lot of the Constitution stuff that I know about. And he talks about how he's also, a guy who's preparing, so he has, all the same stuff that, we all talk about, like, making sure you have enough guns and you have enough ammo, enough water, you know how to grow a garden, stuff like that. He's a prepper, And I said, ooh, I got a prepper cop. I said, I never, never thought I might get handed something like that. And I was just thinking, wow, this is pretty interesting. So he's talking to me about all that. He knows about the Federal Reserve and blah blah. So, and boy, and the problem, but we've become. Definitely wouldn't go as far as saying friends, but we have. I mean, I go to his house. We've reloaded ammo together, and drink beer together. Like it's, we've met up since and formed a relationship. And the most amazing thing about this is, even still today, he tells me, Allan, that traffic stop has never been out of my mind since. That literally is still messing with me now. This is a year and a half later. And that's hard to do with cops. You know what I mean? That's hard to do. It's hard to really get inside there and really start to make them think, the other way around. Without violence and all. I mean, you guys see what I do. It's all knowledge. It's the beauty and truth of knowledge. That's all it is. There's never a time where I've ever initiated violence. It never will. So, and I will never initiate violence. Never initiate violence. That's a whole other issue. So, anyway, we meet up together. We're acquaintances, or somewhat of like a thing. We hang out and do things together as sort of prepper kind of fun stuff, reloading ammo and things. But I still had conversations with him, that later on we would still talk on the phone. I would still bring things up to him, saying like, I want to make sure you still are aware. He was like, yeah, we should have this, and this, and he's thinking about all these things, telling me, oh yeah, he shouldn't have had to do that ticket, and blah blah blah, and he's telling me all these other like stories. Well, I don't want to get into that, but and I just said, well, where were you? Like that was it. That was the time to show me that you now understand. Or that's what it was. He was telling me from earlier that he understood all this stuff. I said, well, that was it. I had a phone conversation with him maybe two months after this happened, after we had already met up a few times and hung out, when I was saying things like, well, are you willing to put your job in jeopardy to defend my rights? And he knew that there was only one answer to that question. He's like, well, if you're a cop, there's only one answer, yes. But they're always reticent to answer that because they know what that means once they say yes. Because at this point, remember, this is a guy who understands, like, prepping, the Federal Reserve and how all the, then the impending Civil War or whatever. Like, he's told me about how there's, Homeland Security comes through and offers trainings to certain departments, for things like this, and it's I don't think that's a secret. I think that's things commonly known knowledge for people in law enforcement. So he knows there's only one answer to that question. Yes, and I said, well, are you willing to put your life in jeopardy to defend my rights? And he was like, well, yeah. I have to do it. That's my job. And I said, you're absolutely right. And that's when I said, that's what I was referring to. Then I said, well, where were you? Because that was your chance. You say, you're telling me right now that you understand me, that when I say, that we cannot be governed on travel. We cannot, on traveling on roads that belong to us. Because we've had long discussions about all this stuff, and if you've seen any of my other videos, you know what I'm talking about. So, and I don't want to spend more time on this video about it, but he understands that. He said, yes, you're absolutely right. I should have defended you to the death. But he was first saying, like, well, what if, oh, that's what it was. I asked him, I said, well, what would you have done, if, actually, I probably shouldn't say this because I don't know if it'll get him in trouble, but basically it came down to, just for fun, we were talking about a scenario if we had to defend ourselves, against some other cops, because he was going to defend my rights, and he's like, well, what if like 8 or 9 guys show up? And I say, well, then it's 2 against 8. Well, actually, it's 1 against 8 because of your guys' dumbass statutes. You just put your own noose around your neck. You guys say that we can't carry weapons, and then here's a time where you want to defend me, and you got the one guy on your side, defenseless. Ha! That's awesome to me. I can't believe it. I can't believe they just don't see the stupidity. They don't see the absolute foolishness of their laws. Absolute foolishness. California is so ridiculous. So ridiculous. Another topic for a different day. I know, I'm sorry. So I just said, well, it's 1 against 8. And he just became, he was like, well, I don't like the way that sounds. I said, well, yeah, being a cop is hard, right? It's hard work. That's what people say. That's why it's a noble profession. If it's so goddamn noble, that's the part that makes it noble. The dangerous part is what makes it noble. I know you don't want to do it, but that's why we say, cops are a noble position in society. But if you're not doing that part anymore, you're not noble anymore. But this is what I was calling like the where were you part. I said that was your chance to show me that you're a cop, and you weren't. You were a fancy dress civilian. These are literally the exact words that we exchanged with each other after we became, I'm going to put in quotes, friends. Right? After we became friends, this is still the stuff that I say verbatim to him. So, I mean, that's why I'm saying we're not really friends, because I still let him have it. I still make sure he knows. You fucked up. You fucked up. But we've formed a pretty decent relationship since then, and I get all of these ridiculous emails from people saying, I can't believe you would waste the time of that officer, man, you're a dumbass. And that's from people that even know me, and then of course you got the online comments of, but it's just the people who are telling me, I can't believe you would be so disrespectful. And I'm like, if I was so disrespectful to this person, why is he still hanging out with me a year and a half later reloading ammo together? And I still say these things to him. You know what I mean? And he's still hanging out with me because he knows that I'm tight. He knows that there's something unique about me. There's something individualistic about me. Something that it's sort of like a, I'm going to use sort of what he explained to me as a cop, but kind of like this this fountain, that you get a taste of and you're like, whoa, that's what freedom really tastes like. And it's starting to kind of work at him, and it's like, oh, I'm really kind of fucking a lot of shit up. But, I think it's that kind of, that's what so I'm using different, I would use what, I'm saying how I would say it if I was him, but we wouldn't say it the same way. Anyway, that's kind of a neat little side saga of me and that officer there. Now I go to court for my first arraignment, and I do a lot of research just on everything. I'm not even law stuff, but all kinds of cool subjects. And I was researching, this is the first time I ever tried this kind of stuff, was the videos that you are seeing here, or the video that you saw. And so one guy I found was a guy named Mark Stevens who really impressed me. And he has a pretty surefire solution on getting through court issues, for speeding tickets and things like that. Things where there's no injured party. And which is damn near every single law statute that is written, there is no injured party. And if there is an injured party, then you usually don't even need the statute, because that's already accounted for as a contingency in the original founding documents anyway. I know you don't want me to get into that right now, so, but it's kind of important. I guess I can give us a very quick synopsis. So he has this letter that says, I'm willing to plead guilty as soon as you show me evidence that I'm subject to in my case it would be called the CVC, California Vehicle Code, or whatever you state you're in, And it doesn't have to sound exactly like that, but essentially what you're saying is, yeah, I'm guilty when you show me where this agreement was made, where you show me, when I wasn't now subject to common law jurisdiction, injury or damage to persons or property. And it works remarkably well. I brought that to court, and that was how I opened it up. Actually, I walked into court, and my name comes up, and I say something to the effect, and again, I'm going to try to put all this together. It might be out of order, and I might not be saying the exact same words, but I'll be narrating very closely. I say, do I have the right to a fair trial? And the judge is like, well, of course. I said, are you operating under oath today? And he said, yes. And I said, am I presumed innocent until proven guilty? And he said, yes. And I asked him a few other questions that he started to kind of get the idea, like, oh shit, he's walking me into a trap. And I don't remember now what was said, but when you listen to the real recording, I think you'll know what I'm talking about. Pardon me. So in order to get your case dismissed, or for you to win your case, the judge wants you to give a plea of not guilty, because when you give a plea of not guilty, you allow yourself to become subject to what they call administrative review, when you are only subject to what is called judicial review. Judicial review means what is the bond the judge has with the oath, but they write all this statutory law under this judicial, or under this administrative review that is a kind of mask, if you want to think of it that way, of a different thing that you're saying that you're agreeing to. The point is they don't want you to not give a plea, because if you don't, then you're not subject to the jurisdiction. So you go in there, and what they'll try to do is give a plea on your behalf. And there's only two circumstances in which you can have a judge put in a plea on your behalf, and that is if you're unwilling to give a plea, which we're not unwilling to give a plea. We have a document that says, I am willing to plead guilty as long as I, am shown how I'm subject to it. And so the unwillingness is not the problem, or if the person is incapable. So if you're talking about someone who might be like mentally retarded, incapable of giving a plea, someone can give a plea on their behalf and say, okay, we're going to assume not guilty right now. And so once you say we assume not guilty, that that slave is subject to this administrative review. And I know it's kind of complicated. Just trust me on this. The point is the judge can't give a plea on your behalf if you just say, I need more evidence that this is the correct jurisdiction, that I am going to be in a place that's saying we understood what we agreed to ahead of time. So, and they don't want it. They don't do that. So, let's see. Before I went to court, or before this arraignment day, this is the first time I've tried all this. I said, okay, I'll fill out all your guys' little house slave paperwork, and I'm like, filling out all the, the motions and turning in stuff on time and all that crap, even though I'm just making sure everyone's clear. But the only reason I had the motions were describing things of like common law jurisdiction and demanding that I have a court reporter, and demanding with the audacity and the horror of demanding a trial by jury. The horror of demanding that in a motion. The horror of having to demand in a motion what is written in the founding document. Why would I ever have to write a motion to ask the court to do what they fucking told me they would do? They told me only they would do, or they told me that they would only do. It's absolute madness, absolute madness. So anyway, I wrote all these motions, turned them all in, and I get to my arraignment, and I can't remember. It's like, again, it's all a year long ago. So, but I'm in the arraignment, and he's sort of annoyed with me at this point that I'm doing all this, plea of guilty kind of stuff, and he's trying to enter a plea on my behalf, and I won't let him. And then he keeps talking about these motions, about how they were set for trial, and I distinctly remember turning them in on time at a certain whatever they wanted to do, so another judge could review them or whatnot and talk about them at the arraignment. And anyway, he just kept saying that they're set for trial, and I'm like, well, or he said they had already been resolved. And I'm like, what do you mean they've already been resolved? I said, who resolved them? I'm not just going to take your word for it. You got to open that up. You got to tell me what's going on. And so after already telling me things like, well, he can't reverse a judge's decision and all this stuff, and he's talking about a document that he obviously had never looked at, or at least not enough to see the gigantic stamp on each page that said, to review it right now during arraignment, but he just wouldn't do it. He wouldn't look at any of my stuff, any of it. He refused to bring it to the table as anything important. And to the point where at the end of the arraignment he was saying, well, I guess I was wrong. It was supposed to be set for today. And I just spent the last 25 goddamn minutes telling you that it was all set for later on, and that it was resolved by another judge already and all stuff, and he opened it and he was like, nope, this is something I'm supposed to be taking care of, and I fucked up. So that was kind of crazy, and that turned into another, it's just as equally as a ridiculous wild ride in the actual trial. But and again, I know I'm probably taking you guys in a whole bunch of different directions right now. I'm sorry for that. I'm anyway. So, so because of that, I was able to, I filled out this certain paperwork, and I forget what it's called now, but it's something that you can show evidence that this judge is not qualified, and I got this judge disqualified from the case. And I suppose, I don't want to get into it. If you want to know that badly, maybe you can look it up or something. It's a pretty typical thing to do, apparently. So I got the judge disqualified, and so now I have this new guy. The first guy's name was Judge Shaver, and I mean he's you don't want to get started. And so the next guy was his name was Judge Puretti or something like that. Hold on for a second. Oh yeah, I should mention, okay, so I'm just going to go down kind of the list of the arraignments so I can make sure I get all the topics covered, and then I'll spend time on each one if I need to. In the first arraignment with Judge Shaver, he was saying that I asked him, who do you represent? And he said, I don't represent anybody, which essentially means once a judge says that, you're like, well, thank you, I just showed up to a Girl Scout meeting. Because if you don't represent anybody, I'm showing up in a room looking at a guy named Donald Shaver, period. And if you don't represent, what you agreed to, in this case, state of California or whatever state you're from, if you don't make that statement that you claim that you are a representative of this, then, I mean, you guys see the obvious logic. And the problem with that is he knows that I'm ready to trap him, and as soon as he says that I represent the state of California, I'm like, well, there is the prosecutor who also represents the state of California, so how on earth are you prepared to explain to me how this isn't a conflict of interests? And so he knows that's coming, so that's just funny that I wanted to put in there. At all of this traffic court stuff, they always say you don't have a right to a jury trial, and that's the whole thing that becomes an issue when they took it all the way to appeal and everything. So, the judges love to say I can't give you legal advice, and they don't really like it when you say I'm not asking you for legal advice. I don't want to know what you think I should do. I want to know the answer to my question. And so when you start saying things like, show me the evidence that I'm subject to the California Vehicle Code, and they said, I can't give you legal advice. I'm like, why are you under the impression that I'm asking for you to tell me what to do? I didn't ask you what to do. I asked for the answer, right? What is the answer? Show me the evidence right now. Don't tell me about, who I should go talk to and blah, blah, blah. Nope. Answer. And they don't do that. So, they tried to get me to sign the minute order. I refused to sign. I put some stuff on there like, judge was in error. Yeah, so I don't remember everything that was on there. But I think I wrote it down. I think I spoke it in the actual courtroom. So it's something like, judge was in error, would not establish jurisdiction, yada, yada, yada. They say, well, you can't write on this document. This document belongs to the state. I said, yeah, that's my document. I am a member of this state, so I can write whatever I need to make it clear what happened today. And if you don't agree with that, then we can make up a new minute order, and we will, negotiate and establish what was actually happening, and then we could, by all means, go back and listen to the recording, and you can show me, okay, yes, maybe I did establish jurisdiction, and he just missed it. Or he just missed it. It sounds like dismissed. He just missed it. And so then that means everything I'm writing here is bullshit. But if you're not willing to do that, then I'm putting it on here and I'm assuming that everyone's in agreement, And of course they didn't want me to do that because they knew everything that I was writing was true. Because if you go back to listen to the recording, they never did establish jurisdiction. But anyway. Then they tell me you can't sit in court and argue with the judge. I'll throw you in contempt. And it's not arguing if you're just getting clarification. In fact, in the beginning of the arraignment, particularly asked this Judge Shaver, if I don't understand something, are you willing to tell me what it is? Are you going to give me a clear and, I forget the exact word that I used, but do I get a fair trial and do I get like a knowledgeable trial? Are you going to fill me in on any details if I'm unclear? It's like, of course. I said, okay. So that's when, it's by trying to get more details, by trying to get evidence, is not arguing with a judge. So it's just funny that we live in a world where you can be thrown into a prison if you argue with someone, even if you are arguing with a judge. You can argue with another person on this planet and be thrown in jail because of it. It's madness. Absolute madness. I did a big deal in this trial about how the officer was the complaining party and how that's not possible because to be the complaining party you must either be the district attorney representing the people of California, which is, at its fundamental level, is absurd, but go with me here. You have the DA, who is representing the people of California, who is going to represent what injury or damage was done to one person or several people or property. And you have a single person who can be a complainer alleging injury or damage to persons or property. The cop cannot be that person. The cop cannot practice law from the street. If the cop is the complaining party, then the cop is doing either the DA's job, representing someone else who's alleging, or the cop is personally alleging injury or damage to persons or property. And that's not possible. But the entire traffic court system is reliant upon this ridiculous, it's a masquerade. It's reliant on this complete deception that the cop can bring issues up of your speed in a true court of justice, of law, justice and law. The injustice of driving 56 miles in a 55-mile-an-hour zone, the holy hellfire and brimstone that will descend from hell onto the planet. And then a year later, now the speed limit is 65, and 56 is considered slow and in the way. I mean, just because you change a number on a sign, suddenly everyone thinks that justice fucking changed. Absolutely ridiculous. It's just such, it is such a clear indication of an impeded mind, of a mind that just won't go a few more steps, of just limited, it's just limited thought. It's so sad. I'm sorry, the point is, cops can't be the complaining party. Okay, so that was mainly the arraignment. Later on you'll hear the whole thing if you want to hear it, and it's pretty cool stuff. And there's some stuff in there that of course I've forgotten about and written down that, you know, even I go back and listen to and I still enjoy. So now the trial comes up. I got this judge disqualified shaver. Now I had this dude pre-already who kind of definitely had some priming up with me from his colleagues. Like he was the guy who was saying to himself, I'm gonna show this little punk what you do in a courtroom. That's what he was thinking. You know, when he came in, he's like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna have to wipe the floor with this guy. And it did not go that way at all. And so I brought up the fact that a plea was never given in the arraignment and that I'm not supposed to be here still, which was my contention on my first day, and that this is not a trial. Even if I did give a plea and this is what we're going to call a trial, there is no jury here, so this is nothing. I'm looking at a bunch of fucking court jesters in a little play. You know, I'm still being held here by terms from a guy who says he represents no one. It's exactly the same as your next door neighbor saying, you have to show up in my courtroom next week. You know, you can be like, well, who the fuck are you? You're my neighbor, right? Well, that's who I was looking at in a courtroom. So, so I just said all the same stuff, and I mean, God, I wish I could remember all this, but you know, I just kept saying, I do not understand the charges against me. It's very clear. That's all I've been asking since the beginning. I do not understand these charges, and I am not ready to proceed. And they just keep it going because they know if they say anything, you know, outside of their dumbass little routine, you know, they turn into these. I mean, every person in government that I talk to turns into like this glitching robot running on some, you know, computer-infested virus version of Windows 95 or something. Like it's just they don't know what to do. They just keep repeating the same nonsense and just hopes that eventually I'll go away, or they'll just grab some security or cops and take me out of the place. So, anyway, I kept saying the same stuff. I demand to see evidence that I'm subject to the California Vehicle Code. Some things happened, like he was told that I didn't turn material in on time, you know, or to the right people. I mean, I turned him in on time, but I guess it was at the wrong office. But no one explained this to me because that's what they told me that they would provide me in the arraignment. Is, you know, clarity on everything, what was happening in the law, and you know, and what to do, and yada yada yada. And so, I mean, I turned things in on time, but this officer didn't turn in things to me prior to the trial. He hands it to me like 30 seconds before I'm supposed to. This is during the actual trial. He says, "Okay, let's make a copy of those officers' notes real quick." I'm like, "Oh, so now I'm getting handed this stuff? You're crying at me about, you know, turning something in unaware." It was like, you know, I guess it was supposed to go to one other person in the same office or whoever it was. It's not my problem. You know, that's their issue. And so. But I turned it in all the time and everything. The whole point is just so absurd. It's so crazy. I was not allowed to cross-examine the cop, which is, you know, absolutely essential. If you're in trial, you need to be able to face your accuser. You need to be able to ask them, ask the questions to the cops. So I would say things like, are you alleging that I was in the state of California on that day? And he would say, yeah. And the judge right there, it's just like, he doesn't have to answer that. And I was like, are you saying that he doesn't have to answer? Like, that's a real simple question. And it's just nuts. And so I just kept going. I said, well, anyway, he sort of said yes before he realized what trap he was walking into. So he said, yeah. And I said, what is the legal definition of a state? And the judge just went off. He couldn't handle it. He said he knew that there is no legal definition of a state. So there's no way a complaining party, who isn't even a complaining party in the first place, and by the way, you never once see a district attorney in traffic court ever representing the people, and because it's just not profitable enough. And that's something that you are most assuredly entitled to when you go to any court of law. There must be, if you're being there held as a criminal, a crime, right, there must be someone who is a representative of those people that you injured. A cop does not count. A cop is considered a member of the executive branch of government and is not considered part of the public, right? You cannot have a cop as a complaining party. You cannot have a cop saying things like, I know you were in the state of California if I cannot give you the definition of what a state is and say that I still am a credible source in this courtroom. So the judge doesn't like that at all. I don't exactly remember right now what they all said, but basically it was kind of like the whole glitching robot kind of thing, where they don't really know what to do, they just kind of keep going on. I mean, this judge is ridiculous. This judge is trying oh man, I wish I would have... Oh, I did, okay, I have some of his quotes. He told me this, the burden was on me, the defendant, to prove to the court that the court doesn't have jurisdiction, which is an absolute fucking lie. I mean, and it's funny too how they always try to manipulate the public with these disorienting words, And I understand, I know most of what I'm saying by this point, half the people on this video are like, gone, this is going to take too long. But some of you are still with me because you know what this is all about. So he was telling me that it's my burden to prove that the court's jurisdiction doesn't apply to me. I said, you're absolutely wrong. It is your burden to prove to me that I am subject to this jurisdiction. If you don't, you are an enemy within this country. You are, according to the founders, you are like France coming over right here, placing a courtroom in the middle of the city and saying, now you're obeying French laws. It's exactly what the founders were talking about. You are an enemy of the state. If you can't prove to me what the jurisdiction of this courtroom is, I don't have to listen to you. I can walk out that door just the same as if you were a Frenchman. In a French court, I'd say, oh, this is a French court? You got the wrong guy, sorry. And I'd walk and I'd leave. That's exactly what the founders would do. So it's your burden to do that, right? Why? Why is it your burden? Because you fucking told me. This is your oath. You're the one who said no court of law can exist in this country unless it is under these strict parameters, extremely strict guidelines awarded to you to give you what we're calling ruling power. Okay? Essentially, you're ruling. What you are deciding controls people's lives. Right? So, you told me you would do this. And now you're turning around and telling me, well, what was it? Oh yeah, the exact fucking opposite of that. I mean, I smile now at this point because of the absolute rage that has subsided since this time, so. Constant rulings without substantiation. Constant. I mean, overrulings, So I would bring up all kinds of objections about everything that anybody was saying. He would just keep on going. Keep on going. Hilarious. When you listen to it, you're listening to a fucking clown show. That's what you're listening to. I can't wait for you to hear it for real. Okay, and I kept saying, I demand judicial review. I am not subject to administrative review, I demanded common law, denied. I held up his own signed oath in front of him, in court. I took the time to go find it, and got a copy of it from some county building, some other worthless government institution. And held up his own oath. I was showing him, see, just in case you forgot, right? I'm using damn near these exact same words, right? By the way, do you remember that you agreed to this, right? So that was kind of funny. Oh yeah, there was times where he would try to bully me around and say, well, you don't have any experience in law, and yada. And I'd start asking him all these questions, and he's like, Spencer, when in law, and it's just like, and literally, I mean, I wish they had video, available in this court, but, I mean, literally while he's saying this, I'm doing this motion, like, you need some more time to work that out, because you don't understand that law means simplicity. Law is something that you understand in. Law is the fundamental truth that governs everything. Everything in existence. Why do you think they call it the law of gravity? Why do you think they call it all the other words with law? It means there is no simpler way to say it. If you're erring and ahhing and repairing the plane while you're flying yourself back to wherever the hell you were trying to remember to, going through this complicated mess of material, you fucked up. You don't understand the law. And so, perfect example, in this court, in this trial, I said, well, there's no corpus delicti in this case. And he's like, oh, okay, some guy, he went online, found out, watched a few videos and said, just say these things. He doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And so, this is what he's thinking in his mind. So I'm just going to push him around a little bit. And he's like, you don't know about all this corpus delicti stuff. And he's like, corpus delicti and I said, you ready? It means the body of the crime. It means there must be a victim. If there is no victim, there is no fucking crime. I'm sorry to remind you of this. I'm sorry that this is rocket science for all of you. But if there is no victim, there is no crime. That's the part that makes it a crime. When you have the victim, you say, whoa, boundary crossed. Now there has been injury because of you. There has been damage because of you. If that is not part of the equation, there is no crime. No crime means no trial. No trial means no conviction. No conviction means no pay. So, and that's what I love about this. I think I mentioned this earlier in the video. Like, I have these high up, on their ivory tower law douchebags that say, well, I mean, God, you don't know anything about what you're talking about, Spencer. You don't know what you're getting into. I mean, I just lay waste to them. And I say, you and all your fancy law degrees and some random dudes walking around just dropping you like flies. It's just it's so beautiful. The mighty fall by the simplest questions. The simplest questions. Yeah. It's always the take it up with your legislators argument, and I'll talk about this probably several times. But there was one time that I made it clear to a judge, that you're a scoundrel for telling me that it's my burden to contact legislators when law is illegitimate or incompatible. It's my burden to go and overturn illegitimate laws. What on earth do you think you are sitting there for? What on earth could you possibly provide to the world than to do exactly what you told me I had to go do? When legislation gets passed that is illegitimate or incompatible, we have the court system there to say, nope! That's what you're there for. You are sitting there right now to do that. And you're telling me, well, if you don't like it, you need to go contact your legislators. I mean, I can't believe. Do they know how blind they are? Absolutely blind. Absolutely blind. God damn. I was going to go off and talk about this thing about you do this thing about objecting constantly in court and having sort of an arsenal of material ready, to assert for this video, I'm going to call them your rights, but I guess if it's important enough, I'll come back to it. So, okay, so now, the court trial ended. Of course, there's the kangaroo court that I just explained to you. They said, whatever, you've never given a plea, we've never started an arraignment, we've never done a trial, but you're guilty, so you owe this. And you just like that's who you're dealing with. You're just looking a straight up psychopath in the face. It doesn't matter what kind of logic or reasoning you use for them. They will find just some way that here's your conviction. Pay your money. I'm done with the court, and I leave. Oh, sorry, I should mention that when you'll hear it in the actual arraignment, but the first arraignment, Judge Shaver just got up and left the bench. When he was done with me, even though that there was still business to be attended to, I was still asking all these questions that were serious questions, and he just got up and left. So Okay, now so the conviction is over. I'm saying, okay, I'm going to send it to appeal. And I just specifically asked him on the trial, at the end of the trial, I said, can you pay your fine in cash? And they said, yes. They said, well, we have ATM and credit card available. And I thought in my own head, I was like, well, thank you for fucking making it so convenient for me. You fucking prostitutes. You fucking whores. That's just, that's what it is. So, of course I didn't say that part out loud. At least not to them. I've said it to other members of government. So now I'm going through the appeal process, doing all that paperwork and stuff, and there's a recording that they require, oddly enough, that you have to use for, I forget what they call it now. It's basically like the transcript of court that the appellate court reads. So part of this paperwork process is you have to purchase this $20 CD, which has the exact same material that I have on my recording, but again, that's something you guys already know about. You had to buy this $20 CD, and I said, well, fuck that. I said, I don't owe anybody anything. I still am here saying I didn't belong at that first, that first meeting, that first arraignment, and no one since then has been able to justify any of their actions by their own rules, and these people agreed to these rules, so by their own actions they haven't been able to justify yet that I was even supposed to be there. Now you're trying to tell me that I have to pay. Well, I'm not going to pay for a $20 CD to get a transcript of a trial and an arraignment that should not have ever happened. And even if it did happen, like even if everything was if all that stuff in trial was the case and I was still willing to pay and all that stuff, but it said this $20 CD is a function of government. So government says we will charge taxes to pay for government, right? That's what everyone thinks they understand, is that you pay taxes so that you can pay for government. It should never be used for anything else, right? Like you wouldn't, tell people we're going to charge you taxes to pay for government, and plus all this cabbage. People are like, well, what the hell do we need cabbage for? We don't need that. We need government, right? We need you. You're the government. We charge you taxes. Taxes are paying for us. Everything else you get to keep is yours, and we're going to go our merry way hunky-dory for the rest of time like this. That's what everyone thinks. So yes, it makes sense that, well, then this should have been covered by what you told me you needed from me. You told me you needed this %, and then this is what government is going to cost this year. And then, 3 or 4 years later, like, well, things cost more now, so now we need this much more. So instead of whatever, 17%, now you're going to pay 18%, right? And so we're like, oh, okay, well, that's, or I should say, most people are like, oh, okay, well, we need to pay for government, so there you go. So the point is, this is a government function. I have already prepaid for this with taxes extorted from me when I was told that we're taking all these taxes from you, but it's justified because if you ever need the government, there it is. The government is in service of you. Well, service me. Where is my $20 CD? I'm not paying for that CD. That CD has been prepaid for. Who told me this? You. You told me this. When I pointed at you, I'm talking about, I had a discussion with the chief financial officer, of the administrative court system, and because that's the only person all these other people knew who to send me to, because I would just walk and write to the traffic clerk, and I would say, I need to see, the agreement between two parties that was made that I owe anything for this. I mean, just because you guys say, they always say, well, it's our policy. I was like, well, it's our policy ain't good enough for me. I need to see the agreement that was made between two parties that says, that I owe this $20 CD. And because you can't just legislate it later and say, okay, well, now we're going to, take taxes from people, and then we're also going to write laws that say, well, we can charge people for some of these government services. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Why would you charge them for that if you just told them that you took their taxes to pay for what you were doing? So, it turned into a pretty crazy scene. So, well, I mean, not crazy as in like, violent or anything, but just, I was removed from this administrative office. I was escorted out because I was asking like for proof. I said, I want to see proof. Where's the proof? They just said, well, that's our policy. And I said, you guys, you're not a private function. There's not one single square inch in this building that has any private purpose, right? There's no private company making these CDs for you, right? Because you can't hire a private company making the CDs for you and then still tell me that it's something that I owe, because that wasn't part of our agreement. Our agreement was me and government, right? Not me and government and these other people. So, because I'm asking these questions, the lady just fell apart. And again, there's a lot more to this story that I can't remember right now, but and you guys will see how I speak to people. It's always the same kind of thing, where they just kind of fall apart. The whole point of this is now I'm being escorted, and I didn't resist, didn't do anything, but I'm standing in the hall waiting for the sheriff to come, because I'm sure as hell not going to walk out on my own. I'm not going to. They want me to be gone from my own property, by the way. They want me to be gone, but I'm not going to fight it. I say, you open the door, I'll follow you, and that's how it's going to work. But I'm not going to willingly step into my own slavery and open the door and walk myself out. So in this guy, Sergeant Zeraki is his name, with Merced County, and he said, if you don't open that door, I'll arrest you. If you don't open that door, I'll arrest you. And I looked at him and I was like, said something to the effect of, I can't wait for you to cite me, the statute that says if someone doesn't open a door for you, you can arrest them. I didn't want to get into this, but I think I should. Can you think of any other scenario where a person could say those words and have it make sense? Where people wouldn't think that was crazy? The one other scenario that I can think of is not for a sheriff. That to me sounds like a fucking king. That's the only other person that I can think of that could say something like, open that door or I will place you in a cage for as long as I pretty much feel like, or for at least a very uncomfortable time. It's madness, absolute madness. A king is really the only person that people would buy that. He would say, yeah, you can't fuck with the king. The king will throw you in jail. The king's crazy. That's the only other person that people would still kind of willingly allow. I mean, they still have a Queen of England, for God's sakes. I mean, I know she's just basically a wall decoration, but they still have one, so they still kind of have there's still the monarchy concept in the mind still. Anyway, so it's just very odd. And he said it was for PC 148, it means Penal Code 148, interfering with an officer in their duties. And I said to him, I can't wait for you to tell me how I'm interfering with anything you're doing right now. I'm standing right here waiting for you to open the door. I'm not in your way. I'm not, it's not, how are you going to say it's the same that if I don't open that door, it's the same as if I was barricading it, right? I'm not barricading it. I'm doing the opposite of barricading it. I'm out of your way. There's the door right there. He didn't like the fact that I was reminding him he's a fucking servant. You are a servant, and you were told by the chief financial officer to escort me out. So you have all the duties of the escorting, which includes opening the door or whatever, like all that stuff. That's your job. That's what you were told to do. I'm not interfering with that in any way. And then I go, I filled out all their little, sheriff's department house slave paperwork, and eventually made a complaint about this Zeraki, which I can tell you right now, any complaint that you give about an officer is completely worthless unless it is exposing some kind of issue that would come up with the officers' union and the court system and stuff. If you're ever doing that kind of an issue, like if they're like overtly sort of discriminating against you for your race or whatnot, then the union knows they're not going to touch that kind of stuff. So that complaint would end up being legitimate. But for things that are actually, like actual real, I'm not saying that discrimination for different races is a problem, but for things like this, that supports freedom and supports that kind of mindset, it doesn't get any attention. So, I had a complaint about him, and they ended up, of course, exonerating it because it's just, that's the way, I don't know, I don't want to go into all those details, I suppose. But it's absolutely outrageous to me, absolutely outrageous, that a person can say to another person on earth, open that door for me or I'll have you arrested. My God. I mean, do you have any idea how asinine, how enraging that sounds to a person who demands freedom? Do you have any idea what that sounds like? Do you have any idea how blind you are? Do you have any idea how incompetent you are? And I'm saying this essentially to that, Sergeant Zeraki, and then later on, and conversations with the sheriff's department and stuff like that. It's hard for me to remember exactly what order everything came in, but so there's that issue. That's an issue that will be on the video. It's called the $20 CD issue in one of the later issues, or the later videos. So then I took it all the way to appeal. This was funny about the appeal. On my appeal paperwork, it said it's going to start at 1:30, and I got there about 1:10, and sitting outside. I didn't go inside it because when I get inside the courtroom, I get kind of really boiled up and kind of like really jittery, not in a nervous way, but in a kind of like just knowing what I'm going to have to face here in the near future. I'm going to stare two crazy-ass psychopaths right in the face, lay waste to them and try to do it without getting beat to the ground. It's that kind of a feeling. So it's about 1:10, and I'm sitting outside, and I just say, I better just get inside. I don't want to miss anything. And I walked inside. It was probably about 1, maybe 1:20. And as soon as I walk in the door, and I'm expecting to have about 10 minutes or so to kind of sit there and get my bearings straight. I walk in the door and I hear just the back end of a sentence of, well, Allan Spencer isn't here, so we're going to move on. Just right as I'm opening the door. And I said, no, I'm here. I said, 1:30 is when the court starts. And I looked up there. I guess it was probably like 1:27. But this means they had concluded that I didn't show up by 1:27, or whatever time it was. This already shows you that right there in the beginning, they were hoping that if no one else in the room knew who I was, and if I didn't know who I was, that they could, I don't know, it's crazy. I walked in, I was like, oh, shit. And they're like, okay, well, you better get up here and start talking. So I sat down, and I've never been to an appeal, so I don't exactly know. I assumed it was going to be something kind of like a conversation of some sort. And I guess there's something called, introduction, and then oral argument, and whatever. But so they sat me down and said, okay, they just read off, the minute order details, I guess, of the trial, and they said, okay, now you can add anything that you want to add, and I just gave them this, I don't know, 9 or 10 bullet point list of all the stuff that I kind of talked about with you, but much just succinct, with the assumption that I was going to go into detail during oral argument, when they asked about all of them, and so then that's how I started. It took about, I don't know, 3.5 minutes or so, to give a very brief synopsis of everything I've told you so far. And so then they had an already printed out response to anything that I was ever going to say. They had it printed already. They were just reading off of it, saying, well, such and such this, you don't have a right to, trial by jury, such and such this, you don't have to blah, blah, blah. Like all the motions that I was bringing up in court, and the stuff about jurisdiction, and the stuff about, what else is there? And the fact that I never gave a plea, and all that stuff. So they had an automatic response for it, and they said, sorry, we don't see we don't see this case being substantiated. I don't know what they said exactly. And they just said the ruling. I said, well, is there not oral argument or whatnot? And one of the judges was already standing up and walking out. And the other judge said, no, this is our ruling, and that's the way it goes. And so they just didn't do an appeal case or an appeal trial. It just didn't happen. It was just, well, this is our response. And I know that it was their response because they send you this paperwork later with yada, 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 and it had written down word for word everything that they just spoke to me when they were up there. And so it just, ended with me, I think it was owing $487 or something like that. And let's see. And so I went to the bank and got $487 in quarters, and took those quarters and went out to the car, unraveled all the things, the, what do you call it, little paper roll things. And I even left a few in the bag to make sure they knew that, yes, these at one point were rolled up nice and neat, and I unraveled every single last one of them, because I will go to great lengths to be an enormous pain in the ass, logistically, for government. That's how we all get our, I want to say, get our freedom back, if you want to think of it that way, right? You're going to do it by choking out the system with, the best example I use is when I was first starting out as a teacher. You ultimately discover soon enough that the more rules you make in class, the more rules that you institute, 3 or 4 months goes by and you introduce a new rule, because you're a new teacher, you're trying to make all this work. And some of them just don't work out well because there's too much administrative mess that comes with the system that you came up with. So a perfect example is like a music teacher. So I had this sort of kind of like a black belt system, because I'm also a martial artist. So you have I'm trying to think of a simple way of saying this for people who don't know music, but it doesn't matter. I'll just say it anyway. So I have all the woodwinds and my brass and and strings and all that whatnot. I have all these different tasks that you can complete, and I took all the time to meticulously work it out. Like what is an orange belt for a clarinet, and how does that compare to an orange belt with a trumpet, and how, all these skills. And it was great, but it was too hard to keep following every single individual student while still trying to run through the curriculum, and it's just the task that you're trying to complete administratively just cannot be done. Not reasonably. And so that's because I just tried, this is actually a really good system, but the one that I use in the classroom, but the point is, like, you have to do now all this other work just to keep the illusion that everything's working right. But if you choke the system out with all these people asking very simple questions and taking an enormous amount of time to drag out, I believe I probably cost the state, had to be $40,000–$50,000 at least for the amount of time, if you account for all the services that had to be that were available because of, as far as I would take it. And that's what they had to pay to get my $487. So if everyone did that, well, then obviously that's the solution. Now they're going to be paying so much money out the wazoo to get nothing. And so, so I go to the front clerk. I got $487 in quarters, and man, there's so much to this story. I can't believe it. Okay, so prior to this, I get phone calls from the sheriff's department a lot, from people who are returning phone calls from me, and sometimes it's a deputy or it's a captain or someone that's trying to kind of put me back in my place, and they all know by the time the conversation's over, they're just this, this tattered pile, this tattered wreck of just nothing, and most of my conversations with cops just end up with them just being silent. They just don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to put the answers together that they formulate in their own mind and account for what the work that they're doing. It's crazy. It's crazy. So one guy in particular, Captain Jones, was talking to me 2 or 3 days before I was going to go pay this fine. I was talking about another issue, but I did come up. I said, listen, I think it's just respectful of me to let you guys know, to be prepared for me to be there Monday, because I'm going to be, I'm going to be in the clerk's office with $487 in quarters, and I'm going to expect you to do your job. And this was the end of a very long conversation, probably 2.5 hours or so with this guy, Captain Jones, on the phone, which he dreads these conversations with me. I know it because he knows what's going to happen at the end. And it's one of those weird things where I'm the guy that the sheriff department hates, but they can't hate me because everything that I'm saying only elevates and glorifies their position, assuming that they fit into it. So it's a strange relationship they have with me. Anyway, this guy, by the time he got done, I said, I'm just going to be respectful to you guys and tell you that I'm going to be there Monday morning. The sheriff's department's going to be paid a visit from me because it's right next to the clerk's office. And I'm pretty sure they're going to call you when they see me. Everyone in the clerk's office knows my face. All the other deputies know my face. I've gotten in arguments with all of them and laid waste with all of them. So I said, I'm going to be there, and at the end of this conversation, I had very clearly well established how Captain Jones was full of shit and how he needs to start doing his job and blah 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 blah. And he starts to pick up on all this, reasonable logic, and he's starting to put the pieces together. And I said, listen, I'm going to be there. They're going to tell you to come over and handle me, and you're going to tell them, nope, he's there to pay his bill. You told him you could pay in cash. If you say you're not going to accept payment, he doesn't have to pay. And that's what I expect you to do, because I'm not going there violating any agreement that I have with the court. I am paying my debt, period. I don't care if you have to count it. That is not an issue. That is not a legal issue. The issue of having to count money. I'm so sorry that you have to count it. So he's like, man, you're right. Okay, you're right. So I show up Monday morning, and they're all ready for me. There's a few deputies. Every time I get there, there's a few deputies, watching me. And so they send me. They say, well, we can't do this here. It's got to be done on the administrative, the financial lady. What do they call her? Chief Financial Officer. It has to be done in her office. So I go over to her office, and I say, they sent me over here, and I guess she was across the street, like, I don't know, 1 or 2 blocks. In some meeting with some judge, and this was like some big deal that they had to get taken care of by the end of the day, yada yada yada. This is about 10 o'clock in the morning. 9:30, 10 o'clock. and they say, well, she's in a meeting right now and won't be available until 1. Is it convenient for you to come back at 1? And every other person that they would have talked to would have been like, okay. And I said, nope, right now is when I can pay. I can pay right now. I am willing to pay now. If you guys don't want to accept payment now, if you are declining payment, there's your choice. Of course, this is all a matter of public record. And so they're kind of looking at me like, damn. They call her up, and so now she had to drive or walk. This is in the middle of summer too, by the way, and in the taint of California, Fresno, or it's like Bakersfield to Sacramento or so. It's not even the butthole. That's how hot it is in the summer. It just sucks. So yeah, she had to walk over. She's like covered in sweat. She's really ticked at me because she had to leave this meeting, and I wouldn't leave and stuff. And I just said, hey, there you go. So it's probably about, by the time it all got done, it was about maybe 11:30, and I know that they closed the place down for lunch, and 12 o'clock was only a half hour away, and it took them about 20 minutes to get through this big old box, and it was only $250 worth of quarters. And well, there's only 250 here. I said, oh no, there's another box. It's out in the car. And whenever you're ready. And then they realized, oh my God, So I went out there, got the next box, gave it to them, one by one. They're just, just another discussion you could have about the just inefficiency of government. Like they just didn't, I don't know if it didn't cross their mind, but like they were literally counting every single dollar. They were counting every quarter, throwing it in a pile, and like it didn't occur to anybody to stack like $5 of quarters up and then pile it up that way first, and then just fine tune later. It would have been much faster. Or you pile $10 of the quarters up, and eventually you can see, okay, well, you get the idea. Or you could then divide it into 4 and it would go much faster. But just like a bunch of dumbasses just going through quarter by quarter and counting. So hey, I was like, it's cool with me. I don't care. I know that I'm eating into your lunch. This is just poetic justice. So. They're counting out all the money at the end with all those quarters, and then they bring me this document from like, I don't know, mid-60s or something. It could have been later. I have no idea. And it's supposed to be citing some statute that I'm supposed to now be like, oh well, this is going to have authority over me. But it says something like, if you're going to bring in actual cash, if you're in, I think it was pennies, nickels, and dimes, you can only go up to $10, payment at a time, and I think quarters said that too. Oh yeah, it was I don't remember, something like that, and then I thought, well, because I had exceeded that substantially, and then I'm like, well, if you knew this the whole time, you handed me this paper after everything was over. Why did you do it this time? Were you doing it because you were trying to do me a favor? Are you saying that the law adjusts to favors? Like, were you doing it because you're trying to cover your asses later to say, well, we let him do it once and pay his bill, but we weren't going to let him do it again. No, law doesn't give you one time and then you can get the second time to work it all out. It doesn't work that way for theft. It doesn't work that way for murder. If what I'm doing is very much a crime, there are no favors. I'm not asking anybody for favors. I want fucking answers. That's what I want. I don't want favors. Stop trying to help me. Stop trying to give me legal advice. I don't need legal advice, I need answers. So they don't like that. So I'm fine. I'm like, hey, that's cool with me. I'm just going to show up next. And I told them, I said, next time it's dimes. And I'm going to come back with dimes. I'm going to do it 10 bucks at a time. I said, thank you. I'll go back outside, come back in, pay $10 more, come back outside, come back in, pay $10 more until whatever the cost of the ticket is. And just show them, you're not going to try to legislate yourself out of this issue. I'm going to be a cavity in the back of your molar for the rest of your career. And I'll tell you, the reason why I got into that whole, attorney on retainer kind of a deal is because what I want to do is I want to go out to traffic court one day. If I can get a high-powered attorney man to go take these bastards down, then and don't get me wrong. All attorneys are worthless, every single last one of them. That's a whole other issue that I can't get into right now. But at least if I know if I have a very common law jurisdiction, very high power constitutionalist attorney, there's a chance. And if that is the case, then I'm going to post myself outside of any traffic law or traffic court building, tell everyone in line, I'll get rid of your ticket, $50. If I don't do it, you don't owe me anything. If I do it, 50 bucks. You're going to pay the ticket anyway, so why don't you just try going to court? Just let me show you what to do. You know, and if what I say works, 50 bucks to me. Otherwise, you're going to pay 500 right now, and you're going to do it, and you're ready to pay it anyway. Why don't you just, you know, you get the idea. So, and I'm just going to tell them things like, I demand trial by jury. Just keep saying the same exact thing. Then they will try everything to get you to move on. But ultimately, they'll just assign a trial date for you, and you'll show up anyway, and you'll still end up losing, and you'll still pay the ticket, so it's all cool. But if you just demand that, and you can start dragging all this shit out, you know, and the judge realizes, holy crap, every single person in this room is giving me this same nonsense. What is supposed to take 45 seconds is now taking 12 minutes, because they're trying all their tactics, and by the time the 7th or 8th person does it, they're going to be like, oh my god, we're in a trap here. We're in a trap. Everyone's going to be doing this, and when am I going to start throwing people in jail for demanding a, you know, for demanding a trial by jury, which is exactly what I said I would do? I mean, that's crazy. So, but I know that as soon as I do that, they're going to be like, well, we're going to arrest this guy for telling people to say something in court. I mean, we're going to. So I anticipate things like that are going to happen. And if I can just be the guy who, I mean, I have several other issues that you guys will look at on other videos if you check out my website, where, I mean, I can't wait to just devastate a county financially, you know, when I take them to court. And I just can't wait until the day when, you know, when I am the guy that goes down the street, they pull me over and I say, hey, you remember hearing about that one dude that cost that county like, you know, $8 million? I'm that motherfucker, you know. I want you to consider what you're doing before you continue on with this. You better call your supervisor and mention to him that it's this dude, Allan Spencer. What do we do? And there's a few people on the internet, on YouTube, who already kind of are able to do this. It's pretty amazing. One that I saw about a guy like driving and didn't have license plates, and the guy called his sergeant and he was like, Sergeant, this dude doesn't have any plates. And the sergeant was like, let that motherfucker go now. I don't give a shit. You violate this, you're not coming back to work. You know what I mean? And I just said, yeah, that literally is the display of true freedom. If you want to see the display of true freedom, that's it. That's me finally being supported, not to take your money and exploit it and, you know, go on a cruise for the rest of my life. I'm taking your money and I'm protecting freedom. I'm putting that into an attorney that can handle himself in court and has all the know-how and procedural whatnot that I'm not going to bother with, because it's all a big phony to me. But he likes taking it down that way, and I'm like, okay, that's cool, I'm going to go with him. If you can give me that, I will give you a display of liberty, truth, freedom, and justice, peace, honor, integrity, and all of the other virtues in life that we hold dear. I'm going to show it to you. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to write about it. I'm going to show you with my life. I'm going to show you live and in living color. But it's not free. Freedom ain't free. Amen. And I know if you're still watching this video, you're one of us. You're one of the few that are left. You're one of the few that are left that demand freedom. And if someone tries to tell you that you have to obey, you must say to them, show me the victim. Why the fuck can't I do this? Show me the victim. If you can't show me a victim, bye-bye. What you are telling me is opinion. I don't have to listen to your opinion. If what you're telling me has no victim, see it. I'm not bothering anybody. There's a few of us left, and you're one of them because you're watching right now. Prove it, please. Prove it. $1, $5, if you can hang with it, $10 a month. I mean, my God. I mean, a few hundred people, $10 a month for like a year. I mean, it wouldn't even take that long. You know, I don't know. You know, I don't know what people like. For me, things that I'm incredibly passionate about, I put my money into. You know, money is the money is the representation of your time and your effort and your energy. That's what I do with my time and my effort and my energy. I'm going to show you in live and living color. Show me that you want it. Thank you. So I should mention that was the conclusion. The conclusion was yes, indeed. It all ended with me paying the ticket and whatnot, but all the stuff in the middle was the culminated experience and wisdom that I want to make sure everyone knows about. That's the part that I want to pull out. You know, I was extending all this to expose all these things that are happening for you guys with the intention of always knowing that it was a trap for me in the end. And the house always wins in the casino. So you end up paying the ticket for now, you know, but with the power and beauty in the of communication being spread through the internet, you know, you guys can show me how you feel about this. You can show me that you want more.